G'day, I'm Pete Seligman. There are a growing number of people thinking about buying a business in this region, but it can be hard to see what that actually looks like. So to help bring one part of that process to life, I've teamed up with my mates Jason Andrew and James Frank to throw some businesses on the table and share our raw thoughts on each. This is EtA Downunder. We hope you enjoy it. Anyway, today we're jumping onto businesssales.com.au to see if we can find some options. So again, let's try and dedicate, I don't know, 10 to 15 minutes. You guys have a little bit of time past 4?
Yep.
Yeah?
Yep.
And then we'll just run through each of these and then clip them up. So let me share my screen and we can go from there. Right, so can you see that?
You can. Yeah.
Excellent. So we've got a highly profitable commercial cleaning powerhouse. I love the use of the powerhouse language there. It's great. $2.3 million plus stock. The region's largest and most respected cleaning business. So I don't know which region that is, but I guess we'll find out as we scroll down. Long-term contracts and agreements with key clients. Well respected in the area, experienced and reliable team, and an employee retention program in place. That'd be interesting. State-of-the-art equipment, reliable machinery, strong profit margins, and some office space rent available. I'll just pull the eyes out of the business overview. It's been running for over 30 years, 4 million in revenue, 6-figure profits. Okay. Primarily commercial lending. Current owner acts as managing director, overseeing all business operations and all that kind of stuff. Company employ a team of full-time and casual staff. Long-term contracts. So we've already read through that stuff. Turnkey operation. New owner can step into this highly successful business. 2.3 million plus stock of value.
There's some asterisks. Why are there asterisks down the bottom? Consulting, migration, finance services. Okay, all right. So that has nothing to do with the deal. All right.
Actual business images may not appear. So that means the picture of the bucket and the glove might not actually be from this cleaning business. And it just making it clear this could be a stock image on the listing. I think that's very transparent. I appreciate that. So I guess overall question, what do you guys think cleaning businesses?
They can be good, but margins are pretty average from the ones that I've seen.
Yeah, I've seen some commercial cleaning P&Ls, and I think the gross margins from memory were I think the better ones were 25% GM. I think, but on average, are more 15 to 20%. And that was as good as it got. And then also, I think from memory, I think the hardest part is also trying to find the cleaners. I'm sure the contracts, if it's been around for a long time and, they're cleaning hospitals or, medical things, hotels or whatever, I'm sure the contracts and contract revenue is totally cool, but managing that variable labor would, I imagine, be the most challenging part, given the maybe transient workforce. Probably some backpacker labor perhaps to fill in the gaps. I think that would be the hardest part around these companies.
Yeah, agreed. I think that the workforce is the toughest part to manage, really, both in terms of availability of labor, but also retention. It's interesting that they mention here that they've got some quote unquote proven employee retention program. I'd love even just to see what that is. With on-site labor workforce, what kind of retention program do they offer? Retention is something that every business struggles with. So I wonder what they're doing that they seem to think is proven. My closest interaction with commercial cleaning was when I was running operations at Stockland, and we we're the customer side of commercial cleaning, and I think that the workforce is just the toughest part because, like you say, it can be quite transient. Often it's people who are new to the country, potentially English as a second language, and usually multicultural, and so multilinguistic as well. And so if there are supervisors or leading hands trying to run teams, they're actually dealing with teams that come from a whole variety of different backgrounds, with lots of different languages. If you think about onboarding, training, instruction, all that sort of stuff, it's just difficult because of language and cultural barriers. So that just adds a layer of challenge that makes it difficult. That said, I think sometimes, it looks like these guys, if they reckon 4 million of revenue and robust 6-figure profits, I don't know what robust means, but if they're after 2.2, I imagine that they must be over 500,000 of earnings there. But again, like you say, maybe gross margins are, 25%, and then they're netting 15 or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, it feels to me that 2.3 for a cleaning business turning over 4 mil, it feels pretty punchy from a valuation perspective.
Yeah, I agree with that. What's the value in this business? It's really the contracts, right? So, would you pay when it comes to bad, like you argue that there's fairly low barriers to entry with businesses like this. Like cleaning is like, well, if you can find the people and they're willing to work, like that's half the battle, and I just need to win work, right? And whether just because it's contracted revenue, you can still get maybe uncontracted revenue with some shopping centers and things like that potentially, or like if you're sharp and reliable and do the job, like I think. I think showing up will be just half the battle in terms of winning work. It's just a team that can do the stuff. So I always, when I think about businesses with what I would consider low barriers to entry, I always go back to like the buy versus build heuristic. It's like, what would it cost me to do this myself versus trying to buy quote unquote goodwill, right? And if you're, $2.5 million, it's like, well, I don't know. Can I just do my own cleaning business? And you could probably find, I'd have to be in the business and work it, but I would have to do that anyway in this one because it sounds like the managing director is operational. Yeah, can I just do this myself and grow my way into maybe a $2 million turnover business doing 200 or 300K of earnings with almost zero start capital into it, so that's still a good outcome.
Yeah, so I think I found it. Because if you go to this listings, the Fin Group, and on their website, it lists Ballarat as the location.
Okay.
And there's 2 major commercial cleaning businesses in Ballarat, and definitely one should buy the other if they both boast, over 20 years, similar employee numbers. Like it's a very
so we did an episode of this a few months ago, and I can't remember what business it was, but we got to a similar conclusion where we were like, surely from an outreach perspective, this should be a targeted sale.
Yep.
I think it was it's a security maintenance or a security business.
Yeah.
Similar thing.
Yeah. Like, rather than listing this for sale, surely this is a deal that gets done off market because you go to the person that should be the likely buyer and you get that done.
Yeah. Which is interesting when you say that, because I think a lot of vendors don't like, a lot of business owners don't want to sell to their competitor because I've been fighting with these guys my entire life. There's this rivalry, and like they almost admit defeat if they sell to the to the guy, to the competitor. So I'm sure that who's this Laurie Farrell from the Fin Group sat down with the vendor and said, "Mate, just sell to this guy." And he's like, "Hell no, not to that. No freaking way."
Even though realistically, if it's contracted, you might get an insight as to when the contracts end. Sure, but they're going to get that anyway.
Yeah.
The reality is the seamless transaction of, okay, you've got 50 people, you've got 80 people, you've got these contracts, we've got these contracts. The location and everything. You could just sandwich them together, and suddenly you're running probably $1 million, earnings business. Like, well, that's a pretty compelling proposition, right? Yeah, I just wonder if I wonder if it's the temptation of what could the market give me versus what I could get from Gary next door, right?
Yeah.
Like Gary next door will pay, $1.5 million for this business because he knows exactly what it's worth, etc. And he's probably not thinking synergistically, oh, we can take out this and eke up earnings, etc. He's just saying, well, look, I'll make the money, so it's all good. As opposed to, well, you could be the biggest in the region, you could compete, and you could go and buy. The other option here is buy this, go and knock on the other door and say,
So that's what I was going to say.
Right.
Is the new buyer comes in and makes kind of sense as an immediate roll up, right? You just go and kind of take out both in one fell swoop.
I actually think that the acquisition versus the build. So to your point, Jason, I think the challenge with cleaning is labor, right? Like in that space. So if you do have a labor pool already accustomed to know the jobs, reliable, paid, etc., that is worth something because labor is difficult to come by, particularly if it's regional, in that sense. But I think, there is possibly a play here to work out who it is, work out who the other person isn't, or who it isn't, go and speak to them and say, are you interested in being acquired? And then acquiring two at the same time, and suddenly you've got $1 million in earnings, and basically Ballarat as a regional centre sewed up for commercial cleaning.
And
You've got pricing power and a whole range of interesting things.
the other thing about the labor, and this happens in a few different markets, but it also happens in cleaning, is often the labor, meaning the people, will be connected to particular assets or sites. And as the contracts change, they actually just change employer. So, like, if you've been the cleaner at shopping center XYZ for the last 15 years, you might have worked for 10 different cleaning companies, but it's just because every time the contract changes hands, you just roll over to the next one, right? So actually the labor they've got is a little bit connected to the footprint of contracts that they've got as well. So, but yeah, and I like back to kind of Jason's point at the beginning. I also think there is, that 2.3 number does feel a bit high. But again, it goes to the specialization. Like if you're a cleaning company that knows hospitals, or shopping centers, or schools, or like, then you can start to potentially get some kind of tweak on value. It's not too generic, but yeah, cleaning businesses always seem to come up in the kind of generic vernacular of kind of acquisition entrepreneurship or going out and buying. It's always like, buy a landscaping business or a cleaning business or a whatever. Like, it always seems to come up in the list. Next to a laundromat and anything else you want to add to the list. So there's definitely something there. I think probably because it's, as an underlying business model, is relatively easy to understand. I think the challenge is that just because it's simple doesn't mean that it's easy.
Yeah. Like Dimeo. So Dimeo was a big cleaning. That was a Collaton asset that they recently sold to Bridge. Like they grew that pretty aggressively through government. A lot of the government tended buildings, facilities management, that kind of thing. So I think there is a thematic there of recurring revenue, and if you can get the labor component right. But I would imagine there's a certain scale point I think you would need to get to. Like if you're going regional, if you were moving to Ballarat and thinking, I could go and live regional, do a little 1 + 1 = $1 million. Like, that's that's not a bad.
Not bad. And then if you really want to go long, you could then go, well, I've done that. Now I'm going to go to Bendigo, and now I'm going to go to, you could actually
and it would be interesting to see what the tech stack is within the business. Like what is, what's there and how does that work? But I like that it's commercial. I think the price is we don't know what the actual earnings profile is, but I think it's probably a little steep. It sounds like it's a 4 times plus, which that's
you're up around. I mean, if you added some couple $100,000 worth of stock, you're approaching 5 times earnings. Like it's definitely too high.
Pretty steep.
Yeah. You're 2.8 on the money. That's a scale every day of the week. 2.8.
Okay, so assuming earnings were $500,000, if you work on that basis, like how would you, and if you're interested in your roll-up idea, like buying the two, very highly profitable commercial clean powerhouses within Bendigo, or Ballarat, sorry. Yeah, how would you price it? What would you put the price on it? And the issue, that was your intention.
Well, I'd find out what this one is, and then I'd go and speak to the other one, sew that deal up first.
Yeah.
Because I think you're more likely to, So I think that's off market's going to set a price more than on market in many respects, because I think the two of them will talk at the local trotting track or whatever. So I reckon you're sub 3. You're probably like a good chunk of it's up front if the contracts are genuine contracts, and you'd be comfortable with that. I think you could probably get a really sharp price and be, if you're prepared to take a bit more commercial risk because of the contract.
Yeah. And also if as part of that, and I'm not saying this because I think you should factor your salary into it, but if you are dropping in as the operator, it doesn't change the way in which you normalize for salary and all that sort of stuff, but it does probably change your risk appetite in terms of value, because it means you are actually have your boots on the ground in town running the thing. It probably gives you a little bit more buffer on valuation.
Yep.
So, but yeah, I mean, for this one standalone, you're definitely not. It's definitely less than starting with a 2, including whatever working capital you need.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to learn more, please hit us up on LinkedIn. You can find all 3 of our profiles in the show notes below. And stay tuned for the next episode.